The human body is remarkable at healing itself, but some scars run deeper than skin. I learned this the hard way 3 years ago when a drunk driver changed my life forever and showed me exactly who my family really was. I'm Alexandra, Alex, Chen, former marathon runner, physical therapist, and black sheep of my family. That last part wasn't always true. In fact, until the accident, I was the responsible one. The steady, reliable daughter who put herself through medical school, built a successful practice, and always showed up for family events with the perfect gift and a ready smile. My younger sister Melissa was the family star, the creative one with her art gallery and bohemian lifestyle. Our parents adored her free spirit, always excusing her flakiness and financial instability as part of her artistic temperament. When she needed money, which was often, they'd write a check without hesitation. When I suggested she might benefit from a business course or financial planning, I was accused of being unsupportive and jealous of her talent. But I didn't mind, not really. I loved my sister, quirks and all. We had different strengths, different paths. I found joy in helping my patients recover their mobility, in seeing them take their first steps after injury or surgery. My life was orderly, purposeful, and exactly how I wanted it. Until that rainy Tuesday in October. I was driving home from a late patient session, already looking forward to a hot shower and the leftovers waiting in my fridge. The roads were slick with rain, but I was being careful. The same couldn't be said for the pickup truck that ran the red light at 60 miles per hour. They say your life flashes before your eyes in moments like that. They're wrong. There was no flash, no montage of memories. Just the blinding glare of headlights, the screech of brakes, and then darkness. I woke up 3 days later in the ICU. The list of injuries was extensive. Compound fracture of the right femur, shattered pelvis, multiple broken ribs, internal bleeding, and severe nerve damage in my right leg. The drunk driver had walked away with barely a scratch. "You're lucky to be alive," the trauma surgeon told me. What he didn't say, but what I could read in his careful expression, was that I was lucky to still have my leg. The next few months would test the limits of that luck. My parents flew in from California when they got the news. Mom cried, Dad paced, and Melissa posted artsy black and white photos of the hospital corridor on Instagram with captions about life's fragility. For the first week, they were there constantly, hovering over my bed, asking the doctors endless questions. Then reality set in. "We can't stay much longer," Mom said one morning, not quite meeting my highs. "Your father has that big project at work, and Melissa's gallery opening is next month." I understood. Really, I did. They had lives to get back to. What I didn't understand was what came next. The insurance company started giving me trouble. The drunk driver was uninsured, and while my own insurance covered part of the medical costs, the mounting bills were staggering. Multiple surgeries, specialized equipment, physical therapy, it all added up quickly. "Mom," I said during one of our increasingly rare phone calls, "I hate to ask, but could you and Dad help with some of the medical bills? Just until I can work again. The insurance is denying some of the claims," and there was a long pause on the line. "Oh, sweetie," she sighed, "we'd love to help, but we just can't right now. We're still paying off the loan for Melissa's gallery renovation. You understand, don't you? You're so good with money. I'm sure you have savings." I did have savings. I had a healthy emergency fund and a good investment portfolio. But the costs were astronomical, and I was looking at months, maybe years of rehabilitation before I could work at full capacity again. "What about a loan?" I suggested. "I'll pay you back everything once I'm working again." "Alex," Mom's voice took on that patronizing tone I knew too well. "You need to be realistic. Your leg, well, the doctors said you might never fully recover. Maybe this is a sign that you should consider a different career path, something less physical." I hung up shortly after that, fighting back tears of frustration. They'd helped Melissa chase her dreams countless times, bailing her out of failed ventures and funding new ones. But when I needed them, truly needed them for the first time in my life, they couldn't spare the money. The next few months were the hardest of my life. Physical therapy was excruciating, and I knew better than most what a long road I had ahead. I had to sell my car, then my condo, moving into a small rental apartment closer to the rehabilitation center. My savings dwindled rapidly. Melissa called occasionally, always with drama of her own. "The gallery's struggling," she complained. "Mom and Dad are helping, but it's so stressful. I can barely sleep." "Oh, how's your leg? Are you walking yet?" I wanted to scream. Wanted to ask her if she knew how it felt to lie awake at night, not from artistic anxiety, but from actual physical pain. Instead, I'd murmur something supportive and end the call. My colleagues from the physical therapy practice were amazing, covering my patients and even organizing a fundraiser. But a small private practice can only stretch so far, and eventually, they had to hire someone to replace me. I understood. They had a business to run. Still, watching my career slip away while I struggled to relearn basic movements was soul-crushing. The one bright spot was Jake, my physical therapist. He was tough but compassionate, pushing me to work harder while understanding exactly when I needed to rest. He'd been through something similar himself years ago, a rock climbing accident that nearly ended his career. The body can heal, he'd tell me during particularly difficult sessions, but you have to be patient with it and with yourself. Slowly, painfully, I began to improve. The first time I walked across the room without crutches, Jake actually cheered. It wasn't pretty, my gait was uneven, and I couldn't put full weight on my right leg, but it was progress. My family's calls became less frequent. Mom would make vague promises about visiting, then find excuses not to. Dad sent generic get-well cards with no personal message. Melissa was too busy with her gallery to call at all. I learned to be self-sufficient in new ways. I figured out how to navigate my apartment with minimal pain, how to modify everyday tasks to accommodate my limitations. I started doing consultation work online, using my medical knowledge to help other physical therapists with complex cases. The pay wasn't great, but it was something. The medical bills kept coming. By the time I was walking with just a cane, I was $300,000 in debt. My once perfect credit score was in shambles. I had to make hard choices about which bills to pay, which treatments to postpone. Then, exactly 3 years after my accident, my phone lit up with Mom's number. I almost didn't answer. Our last conversation, 6 months ago, had ended with her suggesting I try positive thinking to heal my leg faster. But something made me pick up. "Alex?" Mom's voice was strange, thick with tears. "Honey, we need you. It's Melissa. She's sick. Really sick." I sat down slowly in my worn armchair, the same one I'd spent countless hours in during my recovery. My hand tightened on my cane. "What do you mean, sick?" "Her kidneys are failing," Mom choked out. "Both of them. She needs a transplant, and you're the only match in the family." The silence stretched between us on the phone, filled with 3 years of unspoken hurt and resentment. My mother's breathing was ragged, expectant, waiting for the immediate yes she'd always gotten from me in the past. "I'll need to think about it," I said finally. "Think about it?" Mom's voice rose sharply. "This is your sister's life we're talking about. What is there to think about?" Everything I wanted to say, every unanswered call during my darkest days, every dismissed request for help, every time you chose her over me. Instead, I simply said, "I'll come to California. We can discuss it in person." The flight to San Francisco was uncomfortable. Airplane seats aren't designed for people with mobility issues, and my leg ached fiercely by the time we landed. No one offered to pick me up from the airport. They were all at the hospital with Melissa, of course. I took a taxi to the hospital, my cane tapping against polished floors as I made my way to the kidney unit. The sound echoed in the corridor, announcing my arrival before I reached Melissa's room. My sister looked small in the hospital bed, her usual vibrant energy dimmed by illness. Mom and Dad hovered nearby, both looking older than I remembered. Their faces lit up when they saw me, not with joy at seeing their eldest daughter after 3 years, but with hope for their youngest. "Alex," Melissa tried to sit up, tubes and wires shifting around her. "You came." Of course I came. I stayed in the doorway, taking in the scene. The room was filled with flowers, cards, and artwork from her gallery friends. A "Get Well Soon" banner stretched across one wall, hand-painted in cheerful colors. Mom stepped forward, arms outstretched, but stopped when she saw my expression. "The doctors want to run some tests," she said instead, "to confirm the match. They can do it today if you're ready." "Before any tests," I said, pulling a thick folder from my bag, "we need to talk." I sat down in the visitor's chair, my leg grateful for the rest. The folder was heavy with medical bills, insurance denials, and bank statements, a paper trail of my own medical nightmare. "What's that?" Dad asked, frowning. "This," I said, opening the folder, is $300,000 in medical debt. My medical debt, from when I needed my family's help and no one was there. The room went very quiet. Melissa's heart monitor beeped steadily in the background. That was different, Mom started, but I cut her off. Different how? Because it was me. Because I was supposed to be the strong one, the responsible one, the one who never needed help. My voice was calm, controlled. I'd rehearsed this speech countless times in my head. But this is life or death. Dad protested. So was my accident, I replied. Did you know I almost lost my leg? That I had to sell everything I owned to pay for surgeries? That I spent months learning to walk again, alone, while you were busy funding Melissa's latest gallery renovation? Melissa started crying softly. Mom looked stricken. Dad just stared at the floor. I'm not here to punish anyone, I continued, my voice softening. I'm here because despite everything, Melissa is my sister and I love her. But before we discuss organ donation, we need to address the past 3 years. What followed was the longest, most honest conversation our family had ever had. Years of favoritism, resentment, and unspoken hurt poured out. Mom cried when I described selling my condo, my voice breaking as I talked about packing up my life one-handed while still learning to manage crutches. Why didn't you tell us how bad it was? She whispered. I did, I said simply. You didn't want to hear it. The truth hung heavy in the air between us. Dad, an accountant who'd always prided himself on financial responsibility, looked physically ill as he reviewed my medical bills. We didn't know, he stammered. You didn't want to know, I corrected gently. Just like you didn't want to know about Melissa's gallery losing money or her credit card debt. You wanted to believe everything was fine, so you ignored what didn't fit that story. Melissa reached for my hand. Her fingers were cold. I'm so sorry, Alex. I was selfish, wrapped up in my own problems. When Mom and Dad said you were doing fine, I'm sorry too, I squeezed her hand. I should have pushed harder, made you all understand. Instead, I retreated. We all played our parts in this. Jake, my physical therapist, had helped me understand this during our sessions. How families fall into patterns, playing assigned roles until crisis forces them to change or break apart. The next few hours were intense. Dad made calls to his financial advisor, looking into options for helping with my medical debt. Mom alternated between tears and detailed questions about my recovery, really listening this time. Finally, I turned to Melissa. I'll get tested, I said. If I'm a match, I'll donate my kidney. The relief in the room was palpable, but I held up my hand. With conditions. First, Mom and Dad take over my medical debt. All of it. I know they can afford it, and it's no more than they've given you over the years, Melissa. Dad nodded immediately. Mom was already pulling out her phone, probably to call their bank. Second, I continued, we all get counseling, family therapy, no more sweeping things under the rug. Anything else? Melissa asked, trying to smile through her tears. Yes, I said. After the surgery, you're coming to stay with me during recovery. Both of us will need help, and it's time we learn to be real sisters again. The testing confirmed I was a match. The surgery was scheduled for the following week. In the days between, my parents paid off my medical debt entirely. The relief of being free from that burden was overwhelming. The transplant surgery went smoothly. Waking up minus a kidney was strange, but watching color return to Melissa's cheeks made it worthwhile. True to her word, she moved in with me during our recovery. Those weeks of shared healing changed us both. Between bouts of pain and medication schedules, we talked, really talked, about art and medicine, about our parents, about the people we'd become and the sisters we wanted to be. Our parents visited regularly, finally seeing my small apartment, my modified furniture, the daily reality of my ongoing recovery. Mom cried when she saw the grab bars in my shower, installed after I'd fallen once too often. Dad quietly arranged for better medical coverage for both his daughters. A year has passed since the transplant. My physical therapy practice is reopening with modifications. I can't handle the same patient load I used to, but my experience has made me a better therapist. I understand the mental challenges of recovery in a way textbooks can't teach. Melissa's gallery now includes a section for artists with disabilities. She says I inspired her, but I think she finally opened her eyes to a world beyond her own experience. She's taking business classes too. Turns out she has a knack for finance when she actually tries. My leg will never be what it was. I still walk with a slight limp, and some days are harder than others. But other things have healed better than I could have hoped. Last week, we had a family dinner at my new house. Bought with help from my parents as a belated makeup for 3 years of absence. Mom brought her famous lasagna. Dad argued good-naturedly about investment strategies, and Melissa showed us sketches for her new exhibition. Looking around the table, I thought about how organs aren't the only things that can be transplanted. Sometimes family relationships need to be removed, examined, and carefully replaced with something healthier. Jake stopped by for dessert. He's more than my physical therapist now. But that's a different story. Watching and chat with my family, seeing the easy acceptance where there used to be judgment, I realized something important. Sometimes it takes a crisis to break down walls we didn't even know we'd built. Sometimes healing comes in unexpected ways. And sometimes giving a piece of yourself away can make you more whole than you've ever been. The scars on my leg remind me of what I lost in that accident. A scar on my abdomen reminds me of what I gained by forgiving. Both tell the story of how our family finally learned that true strength isn't about never needing help. It's about being brave enough to ask for it, and wise enough to give it when asked. Melissa's kidney functions perfectly now, but more importantly, so does our family.